Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Country Education Partnerships free online professional development program, the Winter Series. And it's wonderful to see that winter's arrived, and let's hope we're getting rain in the appropriate places and in the appropriate amounts. My name is Gary Allen, and I'm pleased to be hosting the session today. Country Education Partnership acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land, rivers, sea, people, ancestors, and spirits. I'm speaking to you today from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eastern Maar, and I extend my respects to their elders, past and present, as I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, particularly those who may be joining us today. This first session in the Winter Series is supporting rural futures, universities and scholarships. As usual, the session will take exactly 1 hour and will finish at 5 p.m. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat room and we will attempt to answer them today. At the end of the session, or towards the end of the session, there will be a survey posted, and I encourage everybody to please fill in that survey, as it is very helpful to us in designing future programs. The program is being recorded, so there will be an opportunity for you to rewatch the session as you can rewatch all past sessions. It is now my pleasure to hand over to our multimedia personality, particularly radio, our CEO, Mark McClay, for an update on recent CEP activities. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I was giving a commentary on the effect of family holidays and things like that. I must admit, listening to myself back, there were way too many ums and ahs for my liking. So that's my what I'm going to be working on today, and I've just put one in there. Thank you. Just a quick update on CP. First of all, I'm glad to see Jodie Fletcher has joined. We ran a fantastic session at the statewide Principals Conference in Melbourne last week. We had over 80 registrations for our sessions around the work of the small school principal, and we had a few key areas we presented and some fantastic resources people were able to take away. It was an amazing session with a lot of engagement, a lot of activity. People were up on their feet, and the amount of positive feedback was just amazing. Also think when I'm speaking and know half the crowd and can name them if they're looking at their phone, probably helped with the engagement, but that certainly did. And I'll thank Damien here, who was in the front row. Just a few things, CP. We know advocacy is one of our biggest roles and some of the current areas that we are pushing strongly in. An interesting one is a lot of our rural families are talking about the importance of AI to their children in relation to learning about running a farm, and they're now looking for schools to make sure that they provide the right amount of education that they'll actually need to still operate in their rural community using AI. So it's an interesting shift in the last few years. So that puts then the onus back on schools, and we've even, I know, had a couple who are looking to go the virtual learning route rather than a standardised school, just to get a better fit. So it's an interesting space that we're watching, but our rural communities are certainly seeing the benefit that it can play to their industry and the way they work. Just a few other things where issues around school banking and access and the processes involved are a constant bugbear for small schools who would rather be in their school not driving 40 minutes the opposite way to get told it's the wrong form they're handing into the bank. So that continues to be something we're trying to work on. Also, schools who drop significantly in enrolment, we've had one from 45 to 6 recently, about what does the system do? Are there some triggers that identify perhaps when a school halves an enrolment over 2 years? What supports, what can the department do, what can organisations like us do to arrest that drop in enrolment? So that's been certainly an area for conversation. And probably the last one is the support and induction for brand new principals in schools. And not every principal starts at the start of the year, do they, Damien? You can you can end up in a school. So there was one at a small school started on a Wednesday 2 weeks ago. It's just about how do we support them? How do we get them access to everything? What do they need to know early days? Because their head can be spinning if they've just come out of a classroom in a larger school and had some mid-level leadership roles, to being thrown into a principal of a school of 12, 14, 8, and the community expectations. So there's some work around there that we think we can help the system improve the way they support those principals. So that's some of our latest advocacy work. Back to you, Gary.
Well, thanks, Mark. I was extremely pleased to see the nature of today's session. I had been a principal of a P12 college and a rural secondary college. And it's not rocket science to say that way back then, we were still concerned about students' entry into and completion in tertiary studies, particularly, but not exclusively, to the larger centres. I sort of regarded it a bit like a steeplechase. But to me, the first year at tertiary studies was like the final large hurdle and the water hazard. We all knew that the students could get in, but to be successful in that first year for a lot of rural students is a huge gap. It's a huge challenge. And I'm really delighted that we're addressing those issues today. So thanks, Mark. I'll hand back to you to facilitate the discussion.
Thank you, and I concur. I'm really excited about today's content and our speakers, and I've already been referring people to this session, even though it hadn't happened yet, for about 3 months. So really excited now that we'll actually be able to direct them to the recording for them to look at. So today, we have 2 different speakers who are going to enlighten us to some of the opportunities in their work and the support, and also the lived experience from someone actually at Ormond College. So that's really exciting. Then a bit of Q&A sort of time in between at the end, but really looking forward to that. So without further ado, our first speaker today is Kim Howells, who's the Executive Director for Engagement Innovations at Ormond College in Melbourne. And within that role, looks as though you're responsible for admissions as well. As one of the roles. So really interested in today's, and I'm stealing a quote, Kim, that you posted recently that I loved. Every meaningful thing I've done began before I was ready. I love that. I've been thinking about that for an hour. So no better way than to introduce you, and I really look forward to listening to the content. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, and thanks for the warm welcome and the opportunity to join you today and tell you all about Ormond College. And a shout out to Amelie Walker here, a fantastic Ormond student who's also going to be able to share some experience of her time at college. So this is an image of Ormond College from the sky. It looks like a castle. It's a little bit like Hogwarts, but it's nothing as intimidating as that. And what the Ormond students have a saying, which I really, really love, which is get around Ormond, because Ormond is a place to try new things, get involved, experiment, support each other, make friends. There's so much to get around, and you don't have to be someone who's done these things before. You can do your first musical, play your first different types of sports. There's culture and politics and excursions to go on, and student societies and tutorials. So college is much more than your university studies, and it's much more than a place to live. Ormond College is the largest residential college in the country and is at the University of Melbourne, which is Australia's #1 university. We're a community of learners, thinkers and enthusiasts, and we're approaching our 150th birthday. Ormond is a values-based community, and it's a community of young adults who are all finding their way together. And these values of community, respect, integrity, learning, diversity and heritage really kind of encapsulate the way in which our community lives and learns together. Country students have always been a massive part of Ormond, and this year 27% of our students come from regional areas and 28% are interstate. Of our community of 430 residential students, we have 212 different schools represented, and there's 134 students who come from a school where they are the only person at Ormond from that school. So it's a really diverse community, and we love that about Ormond because it brings a whole lot of different ideas and experiences and conversations. And the dining hall is a huge part of what makes Ormond Ormond. It does look very much like Hogwarts, but it is also a place where some really special moments are made. If you're at university and you're doing your Bachelor of Commerce, you probably will spend a lot of time talking to people who are also doing commerce. Whereas at Ormond, if you're sitting at the table, having lunch, having breakfast, having dinner, talking to new friends, you might meet someone who's doing a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Design, or interested in environmental issues, or might be interested in politics, or might be interested in topics and things that you've never really come across before. And I think that through doing these things together, whether or not you're doing sports or arts or studying together, you start meeting and connecting with a whole range of people who can really expand your worldview. So at Ormond, we have, I guess, a way of thinking about the programs and things that we offer in 4 different areas. We talk about students' head, heart, world, and path. When we're talking about your head, we're talking about the way in which you think. And we help to support you at university by offering different tutorials, academic programs, intensives, and you can go and have a coffee with one of the tutors in the JCR if you're stuck on any of your studies, or if there's something that you're really passionate about and you just want to learn more about it. We have lots of speakers coming through, and there's programs you can do, intensives in the holidays to really get your mind ticking and thinking and bursting with ideas. The second area is around your heart, and relationships and connectedness, well-being, friendships, and all of the clubs and community things happen here, sort of fits into this category. The world really, while we want you to be thinking bigger and connecting more, it's important for young people, all of us really, to be looking outside the gates or outside the edges of the world in which we live and thinking about the world around us. And at Ormond, you can do that by attending a session called Fridays at 1, where it's pretty imaginatively called. Students gather in our games room with a coffee and talk about the issues of the day and bring different perspectives to those issues. We have on-country experiences called Budgebim. There's opportunities for volunteering, and we have a global students club. And then there's your path. So if you sort of know where you're, start to understand a little bit about what you believe in, what you're passionate about, and what your purpose is, you'll find your path. And so we can help you with your careers through mentoring and career skills. And we have the Wade Institute of Entrepreneurship as well. So Ormond is an incredible experience. It's transformational. People who come in the doors on move-in day, I love watching the journey that they go on between move-in day and valedictory when they leave 3 years later. They've made friends, they've really gotten to know who they are, they've really immersed themselves in university, they've tried a bunch of things that they never thought that they would do, and it's a really, really special experience. And one that we want to make sure is available to all students, regardless of their financial need. So Ormond College, through the generosity of our donors, has a fairly significant scholarship program. 1 in 4 Ormond students receive some form of financial assistance. We have $1.5 million available each year. And we do a capacity to pay model. So we really look at, so we don't have scholarships for sporting or academic achievement. If you can be accepted into the University of Melbourne, we think that's pretty incredible. And so after that, we're really looking at which students are going to be able to contribute to our college and make it the most special place that it is, and then what is the gap between what you can afford to pay and what the Ormond College fee is, and we try and meet that gap with the scholarship. In addition to that, the University of Melbourne are offering a really fantastic scholarship package for rural students called the NARM Scholarship. This is a combination of a $20,000 scholarship that is half paid by Ormond and half paid by the university, a $6,500 living allowance, so that's $26,500 a year that you can put towards your fees. In addition to that, the university offers a one-off $3,000 relocation allowance for rural students, and the government also offer a tertiary access payment, which is between $3,000 and $5,000. So it really is something that I think people don't necessarily know about, but it's an incredible way to make college possible for rural students. If you're interested in joining Ormond, the applications are open now for semester 1 2027. You go onto the website and need to get your application in by the 23rd of October. If you are if you think that finances might be a barrier for you to come to college, then put in an application for financial assistance. Those applications will open on the 1st of July and will close on the 23rd of October. Almost all students who apply will have an interview. The interviews are with one of our wonderful staff members, and they're super relaxed. There's no need to feel nervous. It's just a chance for us to get to know you. You can ask questions, and the outcome of the applications are known on the 7th of December, just in time for you to know whether or not you've got your place at the University of Melbourne and start preparing to come and join us at O Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Gary has a question by the sounds of it.
Yeah, Kimberly, look, there's no need to persuade most people about the benefit of a residential college. I think they're absolutely magnificent. And it's wonderful to see the financial assistance that's now available. I suppose my question goes back to that big hurdle I was talking about for rural kids. That is the reticence to get over that hurdle, coming into a totally unknown environment. Are you proactive in addressing that prior to the end of the year 12, or is it possible to do that? Maybe it's not possible to address what is quite a huge problem, I think.
I think that there's a few different areas in which we're trying to tackle that problem. I think the first one is perhaps one of an awareness issue. I think for some students, I mean, certainly when I was growing up, I didn't know that residential colleges existed. And so even the mere notion that one could apply to stay in a place that looks like an enormous castle and be eligible potentially for a very significant scholarship to do so is just something people don't know about. So that's why the work that you do is so important, and I'm just so grateful that we have the opportunity to talk to your community about the opportunity. I think the second thing is that then is it for someone like me? I think that perhaps in looking at a place like Ormond that can seem quite imposing. We walk up the driveway and it's this very big, grand, old, prestigious place, and that might bring ideas that perhaps it's not for country students, but it has always been for country students, and it's a very warm and welcoming and inclusive place. It's very relaxed. I've got students sloshing past my office in their Ugg boots daily, and I mean, perhaps Amelie, you can speak a little bit more to that, but it's, we do pride ourselves on it being somewhere that's very welcoming, very inclusive, with students with all sorts of backgrounds. And then, can I afford it? And then again, yes, we hope that most students will be able to, with the supports that are available. But perhaps Emily, if you want to add a little bit about your story and maybe how did you find out about Ormond?
Yeah, so I'm Amelie. I'm a third year student at Ormond this year, and third year at the University of Melbourne. So I'm originally from Mansfield in rural Victoria, and I knew I wanted to go to Unimelb, so obviously I had to find somewhere to live. And I went to Open Day, went to a few different colleges, and that's where I discovered Ormond. I'd known a few people that had gone there, but no one that was around my age. They were all a lot older than me. So yeah, I just really liked the vibe of it, I guess. Ormond's a really friendly place. As Kim said, we're all about getting around it. So we definitely try our hands at everything. We've got all the sports teams, the drama, the academics. And I also came from a school which had about 40 people in my year 12 class, and there were only about 20 of those that did VCE. So I was looking for a really big pool of people. We have about 220 first years every year. So going into that environment is obviously quite overwhelming for anyone, but I think like the friends that I've gained out of it are so invaluable, the academic support and everything. I wouldn't have wanted to live anywhere else for uni. Yeah, and I also think that moving into a community like that has given me so many connections as well into the workplace. We have a lot of networking events. The staff are really supportive around helping us find out what we want to do, and all of the wellbeing support and careers counselling support has been so helpful as well. Yeah.
Mark, I don't want to put you on, Mark, don't want to put you on the spot. How many youth ambassadors have we got this year?
21.
Sorry?
21.
21. Wouldn't it be fantastic if those 21 people could go to Ormond College to have one of their sessions, and just getting the kids there to feel the atmosphere that they would then take back to their communities?
We've certainly had discussions around the timing of forums and things to try and work that out, and we're lucky we have Amelie actually working with the youth ambassadors this year.
Good, fantastic.
As well. Amelie, I'm just really interested for you to go back in your mind a couple of years and just take us through like the first week or a week, what was going through your mind and what were your feelings, were you anxious a little bit about moving to the big smoke?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Kim said, is that a lot of rural people don't even know what the colleges are as well. So I had absolutely no idea what college was, no idea what O Week would be like. And it's this, you move in, there's a bunch of second years and third years that help you move in, and then there's 200 people that you're about to be living with in your year level. So obviously, as I said, it's like really, really overwhelming, but also incredibly exciting. And then being able to be friends with people that are across all of the degrees and meeting people in your degree, it made starting uni a lot easier as well, I found, because although I was a bit out of my comfort zone, it meant that, the person with the room next to me had a bunch of classes with me. So I started uni with that support network already and a bunch of older students that I could ask if I had any questions about anything. So although it was pretty scary, and I'm quite glad I've never had to do it again, I think that it definitely helped settling into uni, having that core support network before I had to go out and meet people at uni.
And you've gone from mentee to mentor now, I guess, with the new students this year.
Yeah. So now as a third year, we're able to take on leadership positions, and coming to the end of semester one, it's so nice to see all of the first years settling in, and it makes me feel a little bit old because that was, 2 years ago now. But yeah, being able to help everyone else settle in and help them experience the community we get to be a part of is really special as well.
Proud parent. Thank you both. Are there any further questions of Kim or Emily? Happy to just take questions from the floor. Wonderful. Well, we will have a few minutes at the end to scale back if you do have something you're just percolating over and wish to ask. If you're someone like me who needs a little bit more time to think of questions, we'll have that opportunity towards the end. So thank you, Kim, to giving us that snapshot. I'm glad you made the Harry Potter references, because that's certainly how I felt the first time I walked in there. And great to have that lived experience, Amelie, of someone who's been there, done that, and can back it up. I did wonder, Kim, when you put up all the great scholarships, whether that was something you were able to access, Emily, or Amelie, one of those things that often once you're in somewhere, you see the incentives being offered, you think, oh, that wasn't around, or I didn't know about that. Amelie, were you able to take advantage of things? Yep.
The NARM scholarship I think it's new in the past 2 years. So that was unfortunately right after I started at Ormond. But yeah, all of the other financial assistance is definitely accessible. Like I wouldn't be at Ormond without it. So we're very lucky to have that too.
And Kim, I know you've already spoken about this, but I remember you telling me that feel that people hop online, see the grandeur of it, and just think we could never afford that English scholarship, and don't even inquire, don't even take the next step.
Yeah, I think that's what I hear. And then and also I think people perhaps don't realize that there are, because it's very hard to navigate, between Centrelink, the University of Melbourne, the colleges, trying to wrap your head around university, trying to wrap your head around moving to the city. You almost need a degree to work out how to get the degree. And so it's probably unsurprising that people are confused or don't have the information. And that's what we're here to help. The threshold is quite high. It's $300,000 family income, and we will consider financial assistance because the fees here are high. They are getting towards $40,000 a year, and we appreciate that for many or most families that can be out of reach. And we don't want to have our community is best and strongest and at its most thriving when the young people who want to be part of this place and are going to make it great can get to here. And so that's the whole goal of the program. And our donors, many of whom wouldn't have been here without scholarships either. And so they're very keen to pay it forward and support these students. And they get to know these students as well. They get involved in their lives. They have cups of tea together, cups of coffee together. There's a dinner they have every year, and often they might open doors for these students as well as the financial support. So it is quite personal too. These are our alumni are very proud of the place, very proud of the rural connections that we have, and want to see people from rural communities being able to come and benefit from Ormond and thrive at university and go back to their communities or wherever they want to go in the world and make a difference.
Thank you, and I certainly love that the focus is on getting them there first, and then we'll make it work. That seems to be the mindset, which is fantastic, and must be so comforting for rural families to learn quickly that that's the focus rather than it all being about the dollar. So once again, thank you, and
pleasure.
If we get time for questions, if we get any further questions later on, we'll have her back. So our next speaker, today we've got Dr. Hilary Coleman, and I've been checking out some of the videos and some guides around early entry to university and sort of some of the key mistakes and things to look out for. Hilary's background, the Unilateral organisation, I'll get Hilary to speak about. It's very current. Her background, I see she had started doing a PhD in research chemistry, something around whether sensitive molecules would attach themselves to zinc. And then from there into a teaching career and now at the University of Canberra and also launching, I think in 2024, the Unilateral Initiative. So what a very interesting career you've already had. Hilary, at such a young age and doing a bit of research made me even more excited to listen to you today. So over to you.
Thanks so much, Mark and Gary and CEP community for having me here. Yes, I do mostly teach chemistry, but please don't hold that against me. I'm particularly happy to be here because I'm mid-exam marking at the moment, so it's great to have something else to do, which is wonderful. As Mark said, my name's Hilary. I am a previous school teacher and I'm a current uni lecturer at the University of Canberra, so I'm on the lands of the Ngunnawal people. And I'm very fortunate here. I walk past kangaroos most mornings to get to tutorials, so it's a really nice place to be. But I think having worked on both sides of that school to uni transition, one of the things I've really recognised is just how challenging a lot of our students do find it when they come to university, particularly as you mentioned, Gary, in that sort of first year transition period. It's really challenging for them. But I think that the downside for me is what I see is a lot of students find the same things challenging, which means I think that we should just be able to do something about it. And I definitely don't think that that should be placed on school communities and teachers, because I think you all do an incredible job already. And I think universities do a lot of work in this space, and we saw a really great example with Ormond College before there. But I think sometimes the scale of universities and just the staff that we have and the training that's involved and expectations, it's just very different. And so necessarily those environments are different. And so what I've done is created Unilateral a couple of years ago. It is my business, but more it's really more of a passion project where there's a heap of resources attached to it. And really, I'm just trying to get out the information that I think students and their families and their teachers, if they find it valuable as well, should know before they head to university, just so they can avoid some of those main traps, I guess, for young players, essentially. So I wanted to have a chat about what the evidence says. One of the things I really find, I do a lot of talks for school communities and teachers, and we find that a lot of the statistics around university just aren't known. So have a chat about that. What are some of the, what support can we provide, and also what are some of the solutions and strategies? In particular for me at University of Canberra, we actually have a large proportion of our students who are coming from a regional setting, and we have a quite high proportion of first in family students. So again, I think there's some really significant things that can go along to support those students a bit differently. All right, so these are two questions that I really like to ask a lot of school students who I speak to in terms of what they think uni will be like. And Amelie, I'd be really interested to hear if you had any of these, I guess, perspectives before you started, but they tend to be really illuminating. So one of the two questions I ask school students is, if they were to enter with an ATAR of 70 heading off to uni, all other factors being equal, what is a student's risk of not completing any degree within the next 8 years? Another way to frame that is to say, if a student was heading off with 99 of their friends and they all had an ATAR of 70 when they're heading in the next 8 years, how many of them just wouldn't have completed by then or not? The second question that I find really illuminating is to ask students how many hours per study a week do they think full-time university study actually takes? And the reason that this one's really important is most of my own uni students don't know the answer to this until it's too late. So we'll keep these couple of questions in mind as we go through some of the stats coming up. So I think the reason why some of this really matters is I'm sure that many of you will find the same things for your cohorts of students at school. But for me at uni, with a lot of our students coming in, we're seeing increasing numbers of students who have really quite crippling anxiety and depression. And the stats actually support that. They do say that university students have a higher rate of depression than the general population, even of people at the same age. And in first year alone, undergraduate attrition on average is 15% in Australia. So essentially we're saying that 15% of students who head off to university in their first year, by the end of that first year, they just won't complete their degree and they won't actually ever return to finish their study. This is an average, so it can be a lot higher and a lot lower depending on the institution that you're at. But this is kind of bang on to what Amelie, you were saying before. If you imagine that there's 20 to 12 students from a school heading off to uni next year, that's like saying to them 3 of them just won't be there anymore by the end of that year, which I think is quite a sobering statistic for those young people who are kind of thinking about this really positive experience for the rest of their lives. But there are some really big challenges associated with that we just want to make them aware of. I think a lot of students and parents who I also talk to think that this is happening to other students, so it can't possibly be going to happen to them or their child or their student, but actually it's not. This is something that all students need to consider. So I picked that ATAR entry of 70 before when I was thinking about those two questions that we like to ask school students before they head off to uni. I chose that number because for the last couple of years that has been the average ATAR for entry for Victorian students. And it turns out that a student who enters uni on an ATAR of 70 actually has a 33% chance of not completing any degree within 8 years. So 1 in 3 students essentially enter university and then within those 8 years won't have finished their study. If we think about most bachelor's degrees being between 3 to 4 years full-time, obviously a lot of students aren't considering at 8 years that they will still be there. And again, if we're thinking about presenting this to school students, it's essentially saying to them that when they enter high school, a third of them by the end of year 12 simply won't have finished by that stage. And that's obviously quite significant. We can see here from these stats that ATAR does have an impact, but even for a student who has really quite a high ATAR, so around 95, we might still have a 20% chance of never finishing a degree within 8 years. So it is something that's worth knowing going in, that we're not talking about other students in this case. I think the really big challenge here too is that for students who proactively make a choice, so they maybe decide that that first degree wasn't for them, or they would like to take a pause in their university study, or they need to study part-time so they can work, all of those different things. From my perspective, they're actually really good success stories. So not completing within a certain time frame might actually be really positive for the student. But unfortunately, we find that a lot of students aren't necessarily taking time to reflect and making proactive decisions. They just get trapped in the system where they fail a unit or two. They didn't realise that those key units would set them back by a year. They fail another unit, they get halfway through their degree, and then they're really not sure what they should do at that point. So we really want to avoid that for students. The other thing is that when students are surveyed, if they've left university, the majority of them say that they wish they had managed to complete and that they think they would have been better off if they had done. So we just want to make sure our students are kind of in that space where they're completely informed of the risks and the opportunities, and they know how to reach out for support and get that help for themselves, essentially. There are some different factors that can impact the chance for success at uni, and we saw that ATAR was one of them before. I did a bit of reading, well, particularly before coming to this session, but well before that as well, looking at how to best support the regional students who are coming into my own university. And it turns out that, as I'm sure we're all aware, a lot of students who are coming from rural areas do tend to have that higher average attrition rate. But really interestingly, the Grattan Institute did a really long longitudinal study, and they actually found that once they control for some other factors, so for example, delaying the start to university or part-time work and other financial pressures, if you actually get rid of those factors, regional students actually have a really similar attrition rate to students who might come from a city centre, for example. And I just think that that's such a testament to the resilience and the preparation from schools and families for those students who are heading off to university, that that's the case. So really what we're saying is those other factors are the bigger influence. So any student, even if they're coming from a city centre who is working part-time or who is working online or who has delayed their start, actually have that slightly higher attrition rate. But again, it's important to know that, I guess, going in. The other thing is, this loops back to that second question that I really like to ask my school students who are heading off to university. How much time do you think full-time study takes? For most universities in an undergraduate degree, they will advertise that it takes 40 hours of study per week, which is obviously even a bit more than a lot of full-time jobs are. And particularly for students, as we might understand, if you're coming from a regional setting and a larger proportion of students, they might be working so that they can support themselves at the same time. It's obviously really hard to kind of hold down full-time study and maintain your well-being and live independently, potentially for the first time, if you're also trying to work on top of that. So again, it's just useful to know that going in. I did a bit of research by surveying a heap of first-year university students a number of years ago, and these are looking at students who are coming directly from school to university. They were in their first semester. We asked these students about whether they felt confident reaching out for support, and it turned out that more than 40% of them, even if they knew they had a question that they could get help about, they would rarely or never proactively use any form of support that the university offered. And that kind of comes along, I guess, with this perception that we see a lot of students have, that if they're reaching out for support, then they're kind of failing at something, as opposed to the fact that those supports are there and the uni is very happy to offer them. We also found that almost 70% of students, they rated their own personal motivation or skills as the #1 factor contributing to their school success. But then almost 90% of the same students reflected and said, actually at school, I generally felt like my teachers made sure I passed my subjects. And as someone who's come from school teaching, obviously we know that's not true. None of us are sitting the tests and exams for our students. but we have that idea of that in loco parentis duty of care. We're constantly talking to parents, we know siblings, we're seeing our students on the weekends for their sport, all that kind of thing. There really is, I guess, a web of support there that's absent once you get to uni. On the flip side, as a university lecturer, the Privacy Act actually prevents me from communicating any information about my students to any other person unless the student directly asks me to and involves me with them. So that includes talking to parents about even confirming enrolment for a student. So there's a really big difference there. There are some other surprises that a lot of my students coming into uni don't realise, I think. So a lot of them don't realise that it is entirely possible to accidentally fail a unit or a subject. If that one's a key one that's required for your university degree, it might mean that you have to wait a whole other year to be able to continue with your degree. A lot of my students don't realise that it's possible to get to the end of your degree and then realise that you haven't done a unit that's required and therefore you have to do more study. It might be a semester more or a whole year more. And a lot of my students, as we said before, don't really realise that their parents can't necessarily help them in that transition unless they directly involve them. And I realise, I hope it doesn't, but I realise a lot of this sounds kind of like a lot of doom and gloom and really quite stressful. But as we've seen from Amelie and Kim before, that's not true. The key, I think, though, is that we really want to make sure that students start university just knowing what some of these traps can be. And as soon as they're aware of them, then it immediately means that they're far less likely to fall into them. So we want a bit of a mindset shift here. The start of that is I often say to my students after I've had my first chat with them that I want them to go and have a look at the any of the support systems that are on the university websites that they're considering attending. As we said before, I think a lot of the students in our communities, they feel like they're failing if they have to reach out for support because a lot of that support was just given to them by their school communities. But universities, I wouldn't have a job if my students didn't come to me to ask me questions. And so there is so much support out there. It's just about a mindset shift to say, no, you can go and access as much support as you want, and it's totally fine to do that. That's the idea that we're trying to kind of get across here. I again really want to say thank you for your attention. I have some resources here, particularly YouTube, and I'll send an email to Kira afterwards to provide all the details. There's a heap of videos on there like email etiquette, what does a uni timetable look like, what should I do to make the most of O week, all those kinds of things. I also have a course that helps prepare students and their families for university, and again I'll send those details out, so if anybody wants free access for that and their students, then you're welcome to have it. But otherwise, any questions, let me know. But thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. That's some fascinating data there. I guess just before we see if there's any further questions, Kim, probably just interested in some data there. Do you think students are accessing support more than what they did 5 or 6 years ago, or is it still something? I just feel culturally it's something that we tend to not do, or we reach out sideways just to other students. And do you think people are accessing those supports more than what they used to?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, certainly some of the supports I think that's true for. So, for example, our wellbeing team and our inclusion team who help students who might need reasonable adjustments if they have a diagnosed disability or something like that. Certainly, we have increased proportions of students accessing those supports, and we have a really good, I guess, framework in place to help them get access to those supports. But I think a lot of students who I meet in first semester who are struggling, they just don't realise what's available to them, and they don't realise that even just looking on our website or even where to go to find out what's there. And as I said before, a lot of them still think that it's a failure if they have to email someone or go to a help desk and ask, because in their own school community that stuff was kind of just available and everybody knew who they were. Whereas now, if you go for 5 different types of support, it might be 5 different teams that you see, and they're really large teams, so it's maybe not even the same person you speak to each time. And if you're already feeling overwhelmed, that can be quite challenging. We do suggest to our students, think about it as though you're an Olympic athlete. No one would say you're a failure because you engage a nutritionist and a mindset coach and someone to help you with your technique and someone helps you with your sleep and all that kind of thing. Everyone would just say you're doing what you can to get the most out of things. We try and suggest that their university supports they should view like that.
And Kim or Amelie?
Amelie, what do you think?
I think that I definitely think it's about knowing what's available. I mean, I definitely reached out to support services at college, but probably not so much at uni, because I find that at college it's very in our face marketed about who we can talk to about what. And it's also very common to go and have a chat to the academic advisor or the psychologist or any of the deans. But yeah, then at uni, the support services as well, the ones that we know about, which are like Stop One, the main resource centre for UniMelb, is where we can go. But yeah, I think it's definitely just about knowing what's available. And if people know about it, then they will access it. But if people don't know, then they don't try to go looking for it.
Something interesting that we also noticed that the University of Melbourne has recorded too is that wellbeing can decline over the time that students are at university. And I think that people think that it's only difficult when you first start and then you work it all out. But often as courses get harder and the pressure gets a bit bigger, and maybe the weight of expectation around what's going to happen after university starts feeling heavier, students can sometimes feel overwhelmed or, and have, and needing different types of supports, I guess, all the way along. So it's not the case that you're going to have it, you think you might have it all worked out, and then it's comes as a shock as you might need support. So at Ormond we have psychologists, careers advisors, wellbeing teams. Our First Nations students have a dedicated First Nations support person who also cares for rural students, actually. And I hope that there isn't a stigma around it. We also have what we call a student support committee. So every floor has a student leader who's trained in first responder and wellbeing practices. So if perhaps the student's dealing with something or feeling a little bit homesick and they don't feel comfortable reaching out to a staff member, they can reach out to a student who's there and can know how to triage that conversation if it does need a member of staff to intervene. So I mean, it's not a perfect system, and it's there's complexity and challenges, and we do know that that young people today are experiencing higher than ever levels of mental health challenge and distress. But yeah, certainly the more that we can do, I think, to talk about it and be open about that and point to those resources and normalise that having support and talking about things is all part of life and resilience, and we're all there to support each other.
And I guess just to follow on from that, having seen firsthand, my daughter's now 5th year teaching, but see the benefit that when she boarded, that she's developed lifelong friends from people who aren't in teaching. And I think the value, Damien's nodding there, the value for your mental health about having friends who are studying different courses, so you don't get bogged down in the minutiae of nursing and the or teaching and the different things. I feel like it almost keeps it real. But I did laugh too when we talk about supports. Daughter had an accountant friend called Brains, and they just sent Brains to find out everything. No one actually went themselves to get answers. They just Brains. They bullied him into you go off and find out what supports we can get. So, but I love it, those dynamics that occur, and the value of forming friendships from university that probably stay with you forever, don't they, Amelie? Which creates that professional network. So, are there any further questions, Gary?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Hilary, forgive me if you address this because I lost contact temporarily for a moment. With your attrition rate of 33% of students of the 78R, did you have a gender breakdown of that? And to the others, is there a gender breakdown of those people who have more difficulties in their first year?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Gary. So the graph that I presented does have a gender breakdown, and the team who did it, they just looked at so many variables to try and tease out what things could impact chance for success. And male students tend to have a slightly higher attrition rate than female students. One of the things I found really interesting, though, is that a lot of the trends that are reported, the biggest fluctuations that you see actually come down to the institution. So there are certainly some institutions that have much higher rates of attrition, and so it almost doesn't matter at that point what some of your other trends look like. Finding the university that has the right fit for the student is a really important one. But yes, there is a gender breakdown that is there. Yep.
Thank you.
Amelie, just a quick question to you. I was fascinated, Hilary, by the data around that once regional or rural students got entrenched and got past those initial barriers that they stayed. Amelie, work-wise, going home over summer to Mansfield, do you find the rural communities are often more open to you picking up work when you're back? Is there normally sort of work available when you're returning home for 8 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also live in a tourist town, so it definitely helps with that too. But yeah, I go home over winter and I work at a ski hire, and I go home over summer and I work at a cafe. So everyone does the same thing. We all go to uni and then we move back over our breaks and work around town when it's a little bit busier too. So it's really great being able to pick that up as soon as I move back home.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's a thing with whether it be harvest or grapes or tourism. Jodie?
I probably don't really have a question, but I'm more of a statement. I've currently got 3 of my daughters going through university, 1 in Queensland and 2 in Victoria. And I just think it's amazing how the culture's changed. My girls have, 1 just breezed through uni, the other 2 struggle immensely. And I just think it's amazing to see the culture change in these girls, or even probably males, but I don't have sons, so I don't know, but that they're not afraid to reach out for that support. And I have been astounded by the amount of support that the universities have offered all my girls throughout their years at the unis. Just, I had 2, none of them have been staying on residence, but 1 has stayed at res, and the price and the money that you pay for that is, you know, well and truly worth it when you have peace of mind as a parent. I wish that some of these supports were in place when I was at uni, that's for sure. But it's just great to hear that the universities are recognising the struggles of the students with their mental health, and even, you know, understanding that, yeah, they've got to work as well as be at university, because there is no other option sometimes. So it's just, yeah, more of a comment just to say how really good it is to hear that, yeah.
Thank you, Jodie. Great to hear those words, Kim, I would be thinking. Well, thank you, everyone. If there's no further questions, I'll pass back to Mr. Allen. Back to you, Gary.
Were we having a podcast session? Was somebody going to talk about their podcasts?
Yeah, so I can certainly mention that. So after today, we have 7 PD Online sessions remaining. Our wonderful series in its 4th year will be discontinued from term 3 on as CP move into the podcast space. At this stage, it looks as though the title will be Country Conversations, speaking to a range of fascinating people all over the state and the country. So that's exciting. That looks like it'll kick off in 2027. Gary, I know that's not what you were talking about, but
No, it wasn't what I was talking about, but anyway.
Tessie was going to talk about her podcast. Sent me a photo of, looks like she's in some sort of medical facility. So we take it that she's not available for that. But I thought it was an opportunity just to mention that exciting new venture that we're entering into, and we are still excited about the 7 remaining episodes of PD Online, of course.
Right.
Back to you, Gary.
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to one podcast that I mentioned earlier on in the year, and that is The Rest is History. And it's one of the most popular podcasts in the world, which covers all kinds of history. And that may be useful to any students listening in. And a second one that I haven't looked at, but I believe it's very good. It's the Real Science of Sport podcast, The Real Science of Sport. It's for those who want to understand the science behind all types of sporting performance. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those 2 podcasts. Look, I really want to thank Kimberly, Hilary, and Amelia for their contribution today. As I said, look, I really think the first year is the big hurdle with the water hazard that students have to navigate at university, because I suspect that, I'm sure the evidence shows, that once the student gets towards the completion of the first semester or first half year, they form their own friendships, and so accommodation possibilities become more obvious, friendship groups are established, and so the second and third years or fourth years become less of a challenge. But thank you so much for your contributions, and I think it's a really, really very important conversation. Just a reminder to people that the survey is now in the chat box, and we really encourage you to complete that survey. The information is very helpful to us. And the second in the winter series on the 10th, that's next Wednesday, concerns women's contributions to thriving rural communities. So that will be the theme of our session next Wednesday. All right. Well, again, look, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing people next Wednesday. And a reminder again, that the session was recorded, and it is available for people to relook at it, as are all other sessions in the series. So good night and thank you.